I'm reading to you from my new novel. It's called The Teeth of the Griffin, and I have never read from it before, and I haven't told anyone what it's about, except for a few close friends. And what it's about is some young girls in Italy, and it's about murder and sex. And I've had two Manhattans, which is why my southern accent is coming out. My narrator is British, but I'm not going to attempt that, and her friend is American, but you might notice anyway, the narrator's British, and that's it. So here we are, The Teeth of the Griffin. A few days after Allison's disappearance, she came across me alone in the cottage. Due to her frequent absences, this sort of meeting became increasingly rare. "I never see you, Taz," she said, delighted. "Let's go to our place." Our place was a cafe in Grimaldi Square, an unexpectedly pleasant spot with a lovely patio looking out at the Stranary's entrance and the basketball court. Perugia had surprisingly few cafes like this. Even the Italian spots were usually filled with loud foreign students looking for authenticity, who took out the tables and forced the locals to the sides. But the owner of the cafe in Grimaldi ran a tight ship, shooing out loud and disrespectful clients. The bar gleamed, the espresso maker constantly hissed with cheerful resilience, glasses clinked with the confidence of an expert barman doing his job. "I just love it here, don't you?" Allison said. We were sitting outside. It was British weather. The air was crisp and smelled of burning wood. The sky was sharp blue. "Isn't this coffee like no other coffee in the world?" "Yes. The coffee's pretty good in Sweden, Turkey, Finland, but not like here." Allison picked up the tiny cup, sniffed it, and put it down again. "It's hell on the stomach, though, isn't it? I'd really love a latte right now, but the Italians say it's disgusting to drink milk after noon." I looked down at my cappuccino. Allison loved to proclaim herself an expert on Italian culture, even sometimes to our roommates, who were Italian. "Now," she leaned forward, stirring her espresso, "tell me again about where you live. I want to know all about it, like everything." I smiled politely, a bit disheartened. I loved Allison's openness, but she was tiring. I often felt, while fielding her constant questions, she was looking for a specific answer that I was never going to be able to give. "What is your house like?" she asked. "Is Surrey one of those cute English villages?" "It is rather cute." Rather. "It used to be cuter, though I wouldn't call it a village. It's very nice." "Your house?" "Oh, a very normal house. 4 bedrooms, fuzzy carpets." "Taz, come on." "What? Is it a happy house?" I looked out at the square. The same woman was always there, thick but small, dusty, visibly strung out. Her outfits varied. Today she wore a too short yellow dress. She could have been anywhere from 25 to 50. At one point in her life, she probably would have been a shag-worthy girl. "A happy house? You're very American, aren't you? Raised on sitcoms and all that?" "Well," I shrugged. "Of course, why wouldn't it be?" She shook her head, annoyed. "Plenty of people live in unhappy houses, like my house before my parents divorced. We had this big, fancy house, but my parents used to tear into each other. It was a fucking battlefield." "I'm sorry. It's cool. It made me who I am. Now my mom lives in this tiny hovel, even though my dad's rich, but she's happy." "That's wonderful. But your house is perfect, eh?" "I wouldn't say that. My father doesn't live there anymore." "He left?" "He lives in London." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Everything's for the best. I'm sorry to disappoint, but I just don't have anything to complain about." "God, Taz." She finished her coffee by now and had moved on to mine. "What?" "You just never give anything. You're so serene. How am I supposed to get to know you?" "With time, I suppose. Just give me one thing, something to go on." "All right." I looked at the hard brown park again. The woman in yellow was now squatting behind a bench, urinating. "In grade school, I was in a car accident." "Were you?" "A boy in the car died." Allison looked at me shocked. I myself was a little shocked. After all, she was probably looking for a story about a feud with my sister or some sex tale. The accident was not something I ever spoke of or let myself think about. I was instantly embarrassed that I'd let it out. You were a passenger? Yes, I said. I felt fine, but oddly my hands were shaking. Who was driving? My father. He hit a slick spot, and we went over a guardrail and rolled into the field below. The car rolled? Holy shit, what was that like? Fast. I don't remember. You never remember. What about the boy? The boy was just a boy. I was 6 years old. And your father left us shortly after. I looked up at Allison and was surprised to see that her eyes were filled with tears. That's the saddest story I ever heard, she said. Not the saddest. The doctor said he felt nothing. Do you think that's true? I paused. I'd been sitting next to the boy in the car. His name was Roddy Jones. He was tall for his age, a bit fat, with red hair and bluish skin. He called us the Injuns. I'd never liked him particularly. We'd been on our way to a birthday party and we squeezed in, no seatbelts. Somehow, when the car flipped, I'd known to brace my foot under the seat and to grab the door in order to avoid hitting the car ceiling. Roddy's instincts, I suppose, were less keen. His body was thrown, loose as a rag in a washer. He hit the top of the car and fell back again with his head split open. I don't remember anything after seeing him fly, but I was covered in his blood. The doctor said I was in shock, but not entirely, because I could still distinctly feel my body pressing against his and feeling its utter limpness. Roddy Jones was alive at one moment and then not. I wasn't scared or sick, just sorry, as only a 6-year-old could be. He would not have a birthday cake or get to roller skate at the party. He would miss it all because he was dead. Was he your friend? He was a classmate, a neighbor, still 6 years old. Death chooses you sometimes, I said curtly. I could tell Allison wanted to talk more, to process in that way Americans do. And it peeved me terribly. Why had I told her something so private? Perhaps it was something about her face. The innocence was too seductive. I felt an intense wave of uneasiness. I'm sorry, I said, patting her hand. I don't mean to be rude. Then, to my surprise, with a sudden awkward movement, she lurched over and embraced me. Her iron cafe chair knocked to the stone ground with a clatter. I wriggled a bit, but she was strong and held me fast. Her hair brushed my face. She smelled of soap and cigarettes. No, I'm sorry, Taz, she said. When she finally released me, her face was wet with tears. There's no reason to hold it in. There's no reason to let everything out either, I said. Handing her a napkin and righting her chair. It's really okay. She nodded and stepped away, looking crestfallen as a rejected lover. It occurred to me at the moment how fond I was of her, how emotionally fragile she could be. I felt the need to protect her. Come on now, I said. You're very sweet to worry, but it's all right. Shall we go? I offered her my arm. Can you tell me we're watching Downton Abbey? Shall we go? All right, she said, wiping her face. She took my arm, looking like a little girl who was offered candy after a fall. I felt a sudden surge of pride. All my life, I've been the one looked after, the youngest. Now, at last, someone looked up to me. When we got back to the house, Laura and Philomena, our roommates, were sitting at the table. They beamed at us over their cigarettes. The earthy scent of marijuana met us, and we walked through the door. As we walked through the door, Bellas, Philomena said. She stood up and kissed us both. I was getting more used to this, the cheek kissing, and Allison, of course, loved the custom and took the opportunity to kiss anyone she could. How are you? We picked some apples from the orchard, Laura said, nodding to the basket at the table. She wore a crooked, stoned grin. That's amazing, Allison gushed, seemingly recovered. And here the afternoon briefly varies from what I know happened to what I know didn't. Because in truth, I know that Allison dumped the fruit in the sink unwashed, and then the four of us went to our respective rooms to get ready for the evening. That we soon called out farewells and drifted to different corners of the city. Allison to a tavern, me to a Erasmus party, the Italians to dinner in the home of yet another friend they would not introduce us to. But the other girls, all of them, were soon to blithely seize the chance to change the truth about what later happened for another reality. I've never been certain why. Fear, greed, or perhaps it had something to do with the geography of our cottage itself, its precarious position on the edge of that hill. A strong wind or an earthquake, and we toppled downwards. How could any memory in such a house be trusted? So I too feel I may create one tiny scene I would have liked to have happened, something that could have transpired if we had all been closer or the hour had been not so late. You see, it was Friday, Your Honor. The four of us sat down for a few minutes at the small table, talking and laughing. Our elbows knocked, and the air smelled of fresh coffee. Allison washed the apples while Laura told us stories about her family's farm outside of Florence. Philomena told us shyly about the first time she'd been in love in Milan. Bringing the knife and a slab of wood over, I put 4 shiny red apples in front of us. No, I don't know what happened to the knife. But I can tell you we'd never seen such fruit, none of us. It was glorious. The skin gleamed in our hands, juice streamed down our wrists. 4 almost women sitting at a table. We tore into the apples and ate. Thank you.